I would like to live on a planet with 100% valuable materials, where we, human beings, utilizes every part of everything and designs things to be used and reused.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the Good Garbage Podcast. My name is Ved Krishna. My primary reason for existence has been to find ways to leave our wonderful planet cleaner. We will be speaking with material innovators, creators, and propagators to learn from them how we can build for scale and towards a regenerative future. Their stories will help us answer the big question, what is good garbage? We are all living our personal stories, and Dianna Cohen, the CEO and co-founder of Plastic Pollution Coalition, brings forth a powerful one that will resonate with all of us. She lost her mother early due to cancer and found that chemicals and plastics are a major reason for the current health crisis. This effort for change has become a very deeply felt journey for her. She utilizes her background as an artist as a medium for communication and impact. Her journey has moved from ideas around cleanups to encouraging creation of new materials. She has a deep connect with nature and is a great proponent for sustainable living as well. This conversation will lead you towards a deeper contribution. Enjoy. Hello, hello. We have Dianna Cohen, the CEO and co-founder of Plastic Pollution Coalition today. Thank you so much, Dianna, for joining in. And I'm going to start straight away by asking you, why become an artist and not a biologist?
You're so funny. Well, so I have to back up a little bit before I went to university to tell that story. But when I was in middle school or just beginning high school, our mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And we were told it was estrogen receptive. It was in her lymph nodes. She was 38 years old. And when I was 17 in high school, she died. Yeah, I was 17. My sister was 13. And just hold that thought. It was estrogen receptive. Doesn't mean anything to you when you're a teenager and you lose one of your parents to cancer. But it made me go into, well, I was already very interested in biology and science in high school. And so I began UCLA as a biology major. My goal was to do preventative cancer research. And I had the great luck to be hired to work as an intern, young student in the molecular biology laboratory for my first summer after my freshman year. My professor there gave me a couple books to read. One of them was a recombinant DNA book, and the other one was The Double Helix by James Watson. And as soon as I finished reading The Double Helix, I decided that I wanted to transfer to the art department. It took me another year to do that, so I completed all of my chemistry, calculus, biology, and physics classes. But then when I transferred to the art department, it was also because people in the science department had been saying, your scientific illustrations are so good, you should become a scientific illustrator in my lab classes. So I got up to the art department, which again, at University of California, Los Angeles, the sciences are at the bottom of South Campus and the art is at the top of North Campus. So they're polar opposites on the campus from each other, which in retrospect is very unfortunate. If you want to have people thinking outside the box, you might want to have the arts and the sciences closer together. But this is just an afterthought. And as soon as I arrived at the art department, everyone was walking around carrying copies of a book called Chaos Theory by James Gleick. And I thought, oh my gosh, I found them. It's my people. So I was really happy to get to the art department and have the ability to be creative immediately and not feel like I needed to have a PhD in order to be creative. So that's how I became an art student. And then I studied painting. And when I graduated, I started making work that was collage based, first with brown paper bags from the market. I grew up during the generation where it arrived the choice at the market, paper or plastic. And people chose the plastic because we were told that we were saving a tree by choosing the plastic, but nobody knew what the plastic was made from. So in making these collage pieces out of brown paper for a few years, I then at some point, I was actually in Belgium outside of Brussels, and I received a bag from a botanical pharmacy that had kind of a botanical image rendering of a dandelion, of a flower, with the name in Latin beneath it. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. Printing a plant on top of a plastic bag. And so I cut that piece up and I sewed it into what I was doing. By then I was using stitching as a drawing tool in my artwork. And I had this total eureka moment where I was like, I don't know what this plastic is made out of, but it's super interesting. So I began using plastic in my pieces and a kind of combination of that.
And what was it about the double helix book?
Oh, it was that James Watson was just a curator, and he toured around to different universities and he took other people's work and, put it together. And crystallography, that this other woman had been working on for multiple years, and then he received a Nobel Prize for it. So to me, he was a curator. He took other people's work and he kind of repackaged it and delivered it and took credit for all of it. And I thought, well, I need to just go straight to the art.
Yeah, because with the double helix book, I would have thought you learned more about DNA and hence you would go deeper into biology. But clearly,
No, it's actually like a novel. That it's like a novel about a guy who goes around and drinks coffee and tea and wine with people at Oxford and Cambridge and
nice.
different universities. It's
It's
not
not
really,
it's not a DNA double helix book.
it's his story of how he went around, met other people, saw the research and work that they'd been doing with like a lot of passion and heart, took a bunch of that, kind of reshuffled it and and you know presented it as his own.
Huh, interesting. I need to pick it up. And then I'll get the context that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But what was it, Diane? What was it growing up, especially in your younger years? So you talked about, how you didn't know the impact of plastic and where it came from. But early on, were you nature connected? I know that you had very interesting parents, but
Yes.
but did that also mean a lot of outdoors and connection with nature for you?
Yes. Yes. My parents often took us camping. It was just something that we did very regularly, and family trips in the summer often involved camping, and learning how to pitch a tent and make a fire and take care of ourselves. So we did that for many, many years. We used to go to Yosemite all the time. One year we drove all the way up to Canada camping and camped in Canada and then back down. Other times we traveled to Europe and went camping all around Europe. We did that a couple summers. And so, yeah, I've spent a lot of time, whatever, in nature. We live in nature. We're part of nature. So I love being in the water, near water, whether that's the mountains or the ocean. My preference is really seawater, but, I love the ocean. I love the sea. I became a certified scuba diver. I've always been body surfing. I love snorkeling. I'm an eternally aspirational longboarding surfer. Not particularly good at it, but I've caught some waves. And once you catch a wave, you're, addicted. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a whole other world. And we live on an ocean planet. This is an ocean planet. Life on Earth wouldn't exist if it were not for the oceans. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And how did the transition from artist to activist happen? What initiated that?
Well, I've been making artwork now for about 35 years out of plastic bags that I cut up and sew back together. So, and with that, I'm making, two-dimensional and three-dimensional pieces and sculptural pieces. But I've always felt a very strong sense of justice and social justice. And my mother was the executive director of the Los Angeles Free Clinic. Our father is a documentary filmmaker and was the first American to film in Red China in 1957, in East Germany in 1959, in Cuba right after the revolution in 63 and 64. And then he made a really wonderful kind of cult classic film that's called Mondo Hollywood, about Hollywood and people in Hollywood. And that came out in 1968. He also made a film about the Blacklist and the Committee on Un-American Activities. So we have parents who are interested in the world, who have traveled a lot, who care about people and people other than themselves. And, both my parents from both sides of my family their families were immigrants to the United States, as many, many people were, if they're not indigenous here. And so our families made up of people who came from Russia, people who came from Poland, and people who came from Greece.
And talk to us about the genesis now of the Plastic Pollution Coalition. How did that happen?
In about 2007, maybe 2006, 2007, I started hearing what felt like a lone voice at the time. It was Captain Charlie Moore. And he was talking about how there was an island of plastic forming, a gyre of plastic in the Pacific Ocean. It's the northeastern Pacific Gyre. And he was trying to raise awareness about what was happening. And I heard him, and I reached out to him and had a conversation with him. And my original idea was that there must be some way to clean it up. And so I contacted him, and he immediately shut down my idea. He said, no, it's not possible to clean it up. And I said, I think you're wrong. You keep saying that to me, but some young person's going to come along and they're going to figure out how to do it. And he was like, okay, well, good luck to them. So, Charlie's kind of he's very direct in what he thinks about things. And so Charlie Moore was the first person that I heard about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch from. But I also, in my own life, was finding this experience of every time I'd go to the ocean or swim in the sea, wherever I was, whether it was in the United States, on the Pacific Ocean, or in the Mediterranean, or in Polynesia, in Australia, in different parts of the world, I was constantly finding plastic and plastic washed up and chewed on plastic and nibbled plastic and plastic garbage. So initially my response to that, and, I think this is also a lot of other ocean lovers and water women and water men's reaction, is you pick up what you see, you grab it, you bring it in, you look for a garbage can to put it in, because that was the original MO. I didn't even know that maybe you could recycle it, or, there was nothing like that available. There weren't recycling containers at the beach. So I was seeing a lot of plastic washing up. I was learning that there was a gyre in the Pacific Ocean, and I wanted to try and figure out how to address the problem. So that began a process where I then spent a year developing a business plan to go out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I was going to bring a bunch of friends who were professional surfers, musicians, visual artists. And I thought, we can pick this stuff up. We'll bring a big cargo ship and some decommissioned fishing trawlers. I heard that there was a lot less fish in the ocean, so I thought we could use these fishing trawlers to pick up the plastic. I found out about these brothers in Utah who were making a machine that could chip up to 50% organic matter. So I was talking to them. It was only $1 million for one of these machines. A crane. So the whole idea was to go out there, harvest this stuff, which I thought was floating on the surface. I mean, I'm saying it in a funny way to you because I literally understand it so much better now, but this is what I thought it was, right? I thought it was floating on the surface. I thought it was an island. I thought it was a destination you could travel to. I thought you could just harvest it by picking it up. And then my idea was to chip it up and cold mold it and create bricks and build houses. So this was the idea originally. And at first I'd heard about some other groups that were doing something like this or trying to raise awareness and clean it up. So I reached out to them, but they weren't doing it in a way that I thought made sense. So I didn't align myself with those other groups. Basically what I found after talking with some other people that I met was that my idea to go clean it up was not only unrealistic, it was a Sisyphusian task, and that I needed to go back to the drawing board. And it's quite funny, I had an opportunity to pitch it to the head of the Google Foundation, Megan Smith, and I said to her, I'm so sorry, I just learned 3 days ago that this idea, my whole business plan is not viable. And I'll still tell you about it if you'd like to know about it. I don't know if you've heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but I can tell you what it is from what I've come to understand. But I want to go back to the drawing board and then come back to you again. And she had brought her chief scientist into the meeting. And so we we discussed it, and then we said we'd circle back with each other. But what I came to understand is that I couldn't just go clean it up. It was not just floating on the surface. It was not in one location. It was spread out over approximately 2,000 square miles, much bigger than what people say, 2,000, 2 times the size of Texas or something like that. It's larger than that. It may even be as large as the continental United States, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And that it's not just one gyre of plastic. There's multiple gyres of plastic because it has to do with the air and the wind current, the ocean current in the ocean, and how things kind of accumulate. But not only that, it's not just on the surface, it's in all of the water strata, it's on the ocean floor, and it's being eaten and ingested by the entire wildlife chain of the ocean and pelagic seabirds and everything. So everything's eating it. And it's not possible. We literally would have to sift the entire ocean, and that would be full of organic life. So it's not possible to clean it up. And so that basically is a long way of saying, I realized that my plan wasn't a good one to clean it up. So I went back to the drawing board, and the drawing board included getting together with some people at a meeting that was held at Google and finding some folks who had been looking at the issue the way I had and deciding to form an alliance together where we were all became co-founders of Plastic Pollution Coalition. We then struggled for 3 days to come up with what to call our organization. And after 3 days, we decided it needed to have the word plastic in it, and it needed to have the word pollution in it. And so our original idea was to create a coalition or an alliance that allowed a big tent, big umbrella of lots of different organizations, and then eventually businesses who could join us, who were either working on solutions or working on raising awareness, educating people, or some element of the whole chain of this problem. So that was 2009. Now it's 2025. So we're in our 16th year of work. Our coalition is just over 1,000 organizations and businesses. We're about 50% businesses now, and a lot of businesses doing really interesting work with alternative materials or infrastructure solutions or reusable and refillable solutions. But we're really the most interested in the ones that are non-toxic and biobenign.
And what were the original aims when you guys came together? That, of course, you're going to build this coalition. That's great. But how are you going to act on the crisis to be able to provide, a change?
So our original aims were we had a couple of them. One was we launched our first initiative was called 4Rs. So take the 3R model that was created by industry, reduce, reuse, recycle, and add a 4th R onto the front, which is refuse. So whenever possible, refuse plastic, refuse single-use plastic. So that was the first initiative. So in order to join our coalition, you had to take a pledge agreeing that that would be part of your focus and your messaging, 1. And 2, that whenever applicable, you would call it plastic and call it plastic pollution rather than marine debris, litter, rubbish, waste, and garbage.
And why do you say that is so important? Why do you find that to be, you're particular about plastic pollution and not something else? And why is that?
Because we really wanted to focus it on the material that's problematic. And the material that's problematic is plastic. And when you looked, for example, on the old NOAA website, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, which I've heard has been completely refabbed right now with the current administration to be like a warehouse to sell people on the idea that they should get involved in deep sea mining, which is just sounds like a disaster to me. I haven't looked at it, but I was just told that. Actually, just in a meeting I was in right before we started talking. So, on the NOAA website, their definition of marine debris doesn't include the word plastic. It just included natural materials and some man-made things, something like that. So it was very vague. And we thought it was important, if we're going to talk about plastic and plastic pollution, to really focus on that. So the second thing we asked is again, like I said, whenever possible, you call it what it is to people. When you call something litter, it sounds kind of light. When you call something rubbish, it sounds kind of light. I think that nature, when I look to nature and having been a biology major, nature doesn't create any waste. Something has evolved to utilize every part of everything, including our bodies when we die. Whether it's bacteria or microbes or whatever it is, something has evolved that can utilize every piece of everything. And yet we've taken this material, plastic, which 99% of plastic currently used is made from petrochemicals and, oil or fracked gas. We've taken this material and we have created something that either breaks apart, but it doesn't in fact break down. And we are designing single-use things that are meant for a very short amount of time with a material that's may last 400 years. It'll certainly last longer than our bodies. And then, of course, some of it is breaking apart, either because of the additives, et cetera, in it. And then when it breaks apart, it's becoming part of the air that we breathe. It's in the food that we're eating. It's being uptaken in plants and in soil for agriculture. We're inhaling it through tire dust, filaments, from synthetic clothing, and just in the air in general. We're eating it in our food. We're drinking it in our water. We have a total fiasco on our hands with a material that, I actually think plastic should be treated like everything else that we use, cardboard, glass, etc., as a valuable material. But it is not designed for that, and it is not treated that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I keep using this statement when I'm talking, especially when we talk to our teams when they join. Say, it's very easy to say, oh, plastic will disintegrate, or nobody knows, but 500 years or 400 years. And as I always ask, when was the first one created? And it's about 76 odd years. So I say that, the first one still has 424 years to go. So, imagine the impact that is going to be there as we go along. So it's huge. I want to go back to your gyres and learn more about that. So I've also heard about that. And then I heard your talk on there are 11 gyres. And it's interesting to hear that it's not just a patch as they show it. It's a deeper issue. Have you personally been in that area and seen, or do you know people directly who have kind of understood and been in that space? And what is that like? And tell us more about it.
Yeah. So I have never been to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch myself. But again, people that I look to who we consider founding members and scientific advisors and guides to the work that we do have been there. I'll give you an example. Our friend Mike Degree, he passed away, but he was one of our scientific advisors and made a lot of films about the ocean and was a biologist, animals in the ocean, etc., sea life. He went down in the Mediterranean and sent me back a photo that comes up all the time on my phone. I don't know what depth he was at, but on the ocean floor, there were plastic bags. And I think that's because for a long time, human beings have treated the ocean as a vast space where they could throw things away. But the ocean is constantly trying to vomit this stuff back out, through wave action, at least the things that are not lost on the bottom of the ocean floor. Yeah. So, and then also talking with Charlie Moore, I came to understand better, the various latitudes that you find the Great Pacific Garbage Patch at. And he was very sweet. I asked him as a favor. It was very sweet. Right when Boyan Slat first was creating the Ocean Cleanup Project, Charlie very, very kindly joined me on a call with Boyan, and we made recommendations to he and the Ocean Cleanup and his chief scientist about which latitudes he would find the Great Pacific Garbage Patch at. Charlie very kindly explained the latitudes that Boyan would find it in and made this recommendation that instead of asking boats to pull the trawl while they were sailing there in the race, that Charlie mentioned that there were not enough port places for those boats to dock, and it was expensive to dock in Hawaii, so a lot of them were probably going to turn around and sail right back to the West Coast. And so he made a recommendation that they approached them and asked them to pull trawls on the way back going from west to east. And they did. And that is where Boyan got his first information that they collected about how much plastic was on the surface in the top 3 feet or whatever in the garbage patch. So, you know, I'm a big fan of trying to help facilitate people working together and partnering with each other to move us more quickly, share information, and get to all the real things that we need to have happen, like policy change, legislation, engaging with businesses, getting businesses to change their model, their production model, their packaging models. I'm a big fan of that.
The real challenge that we face is the extreme convenience and our kind of getting used to that convenience. And of course, you're talking about single-use plastics. The typical use is 12 to 15 minutes after, at least if we forget the shelf life. And we are so used to that. And I find it so challenging when we are talking, even in our case, to customers that, like, let's look at this holistically and let's try and create better materials that can not have that impact. So what is your formula? How does one convince people to understand that this convenience has a huge, impact overall for humanity?
I mean, I don't find single-use plastic convenient at all. I don't find something
That's a great angle.
I don't find something convenient that is impacting my health and the health of my family. And even prior to that, in the production of it, negatively impacted the communities where it was produced. Whether that's here in Los Angeles, in South Los Angeles with all the oil wells there, or on the Gulf Coast in Houston, which is totally toxic and polluted all of that area for all the fishermen and fisher folk there and all the people, the shrimpers, and they destroyed that industry. And it's like 70 miles of petrochem and plastic facilities there, where the people who live there have to sequester and, cover all the cracks around their doors with wet towels and stuff like that, and sequester in place when there's a leak or an explosion or some kind of problem at any of these facilities. And the same thing with Cancer Alley and our friends who live in St. James Parish, St. John's Parish, Rise St. James, the Descendants Project, all along from Baton Rouge down to New Orleans in Louisiana. It's called Cancer Alley. And our friends and colleagues we work with there have friends dying every week. One of our friends just had their dog just died. I mean, this is, but you don't have to go far away to have this experience. You can go to Ohio, you can go to the Ohio River Valley, you can go to central Pennsylvania, you can go to New Jersey, you can go to Canada and Calgary. Like it's everywhere all around us. The facilities that make plastic convenient for us. That to me is not convenient. If we're poisoning entire communities and ourselves in the production of something, there's absolutely nothing convenient about that. And plastic only seems like a convenient or inexpensive material because all the true costs to our health and the health of our water, our soil, our air, our food, our plants, our animals, our babies, our future generations, all those true costs have been externalized. And they've been externalized so that the companies producing this stuff are not responsible for it either. So I don't think it's even convenient. It's not convenience.
So tell me, what would you say to a consumer, number one, who wants a bag of potato chips but has no option? The only option they have is whether they buy that potato chips or not. And it's obviously not going to do any good to their health, but the only way they can buy that popcorn or chips or whatever is in a poly bag. And the second part is that when we talk to companies, they are so focused on the cost and performance angle. So the first, they say a larger company like PepsiCo or Unilever, when you talk to them, they'll be like, we cannot increase our cost if our competitor does not, because we are in this game and, there is a margin that we have to look at. So initially there will be a cost increase even if there's a solution. So there's the company angle and there's the consumer angle. How would you pitch to them that this is not a good idea?
I mean, I don't have the perfect answer for you guys and your work and what you're doing, but there's a place near where I live, and I had a meeting there yesterday, and they make their own potato chips. And when you order them, they serve them to you on a plate with a little piece of paper beneath them. And I feel fine about eating those. And that's my preference, actually, for potato chips. The first person who comes up with a good, like, wax paper bag that is not a petroleum-based wax and is non-toxic, that can hold some chips or something like that, is going to be a gazillionaire. I'm fairly certain there are R&D departments at all these big places, you know, Nestle's, Unilever, et cetera, that are all probably working on this. They may even have answers already. And there are also alternate coatings for all the stuff that's coated with plastic right now. It's just going to be a question of what works with which food materials. And they include seaweed, algae, mushroom mycelium, chitin, all these different materials. So, you know, let's see. But in terms of the producer and making it cost competitive for them, they're going to have to figure it out themselves. I mean, I think it's just lazy and an excuse that they don't do it. And they've also pushed the producer responsibility, again, off onto the public. That needs to change with policy and legislation so that they're held accountable for the pollution that they're creating. I have pretty strong opinions about this. Sorry.
I respect that. Of course, we need to, right? Otherwise, how will there be change? But of course, you know, those of us trying to make change also come in against this idea that what happens is when you are used to a material currently, you kind of benchmark against that, you know, that standard. And there are certain properties that inorganics or petroleum-based polymers gain automatically. So there's that challenge that happens when you're trying to create a material which is more natural, and it may perform as well. But the challenge is that people are used to a certain standard of barriers and stuff like that, and they want you to match that standard. And that becomes another challenge which we are trying to work through. And hopefully, slowly, we'll get answers, because I don't even look at it as, you know, when our teams think of it, as soon as you think of something as a replacement, there's a challenge. Instead, if you think of it as the first principles, that, okay, you have to create something that is going to carry a substrate from A to B for a certain amount of time. And now how do you make it work? Then you get very different answers. So at least what we are noticing is that if you get out of that syndrome of wanting to replace the current substrate and go into what you were saying, like, okay, there can be a wax-based paper for carrying the potato chips. It may not carry it for 6 months. It might carry it for 6 days. So what? You know, you might eat fresher than what you're eating now. So at least what we are seeing is that there is a lot of people like you are seeing who are trying to make that change.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, to me, if I walked into a cafe that's been closed for a while. They have a new owner, and just to look around and see what was happening. And I asked how it functioned, and there's literally nobody at the counter. You just order at a window, and they give you a bunch of stuff, but it seems to all be in plastic containers with plastic forks and spoons and things like that. And I said to the woman, I'm never going to eat here. And she said, oh, no, it's really nice. It's really nice. It's packaged really nicely. I said, I don't care. Like, I just am not going to come somewhere where you're serving me the food in plastic with plastic and pay to sit in a space and eat that way. So, I mean, you know, here in Los Angeles, it's great because we're part of Reusable Los Angeles. Reusable LA has a big push to get reusables back into restaurants and cafes and coffee shops, etc. And often if you go into a place here and in other parts of the United States with your own reusable, this is a steel cup, oftentimes you get a small discount when you buy your coffee or tea in a reusable. And that I really like. I think people can do better to market or message that. I mean, if companies put as much money into marketing for the behavior change and what is offered in terms of reuse and refill for things as they do into all the baloney plastic single-use stuff, you know, we'd be in better shape. But it's important to remember that plastic contains more than 16,000 chemicals. And I think it's 42,000 of them are known to be hazardous to human health. I feel like our health is in pretty urgent danger. and people don't realize how they're being impacted. So all of the research that's just come out, even in the last couple of years, finding microplastics in our arteries, in our hearts, in our brains, in testicles, in placenta, in deep in our lung tissue. This is all should be incredibly alarming to people, and, make them want to change in the ways that they're able to. I feel pretty lucky. I live in Southern California, and I have a little garden outside my kitchen door, so I can grow food. Right now I have a bunch of grapes growing, and they're so delicious, so amazing tasting, and grapefruits. I really like going to the open farmers markets here, and we have them all year round. So I realize for somebody who lives in a hemisphere where it gets colder, that might not be an option all year, but a lot of people who live within a certain distance of the equator do have the ability to go to farmers markets and get to know the farmers nearby who grow the food that you eat, and eat food more locally and buy things unpackaged. And I love going to the market with my reusable canvas bag. And, I have one of my bags here. It's kind of cute. We just made these for something fun this year. It was for an event we did.
Super, love it. And for those who are listening, what Dianna is showing us is a beautiful bag which says "Live Plastic Free," and that's such a cool saying.
Yeah. So, I just show up with my own bags and baskets, and even little cotton mesh bags that I can use for fruits and vegetables if I want to have them separated from each other. But all of this has kind of been taught to us, this idea that we buy fruit and vegetables and things, everything needs to be in its own little separate plastic package. It just seems ridiculous. And then my other favorite thing that I carry with me all the time, besides my cup that I showed you, my steel cup. This is a cool one because it's made by this company called Pirani that's part of our coalition, but is my to-go-ware kit. And I stuff it full of other things too. I've got it came with one pair of chopsticks, but I put 2 extra pairs of chopsticks in it. And then I have a stainless steel straw and a copper straw because I like to drink iced tea, sometimes with a straw, not all the time. And it's got a fork, knife, spoon. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I guess this is also like a beer opener or a bottle opener, although I haven't used that very much, but I love this.
And it seems very convenient. Like we were talking
very convenient.
About.
You're talking about convenience. Yeah. It's made by this cool company. They're called To Go Ware. They're part of our coalition.
Okay, nice. I'll definitely.
Yeah, I was bringing things for show and tell.
Great. No, we love it. Just like what you were talking about earlier, and I noticed that I'm a relatively recent immigrant, and I grew up in the Indian Himalayas, and it breaks my heart. I was recently back, and not a spot, Dianne, could I see. There is just, you're driving, and it's just litter on this beautiful, what used to be pristine hills. Nowhere. There is not a spot where if I put my eye anywhere, will I not notice?
Right. And Ved, why do you think that's happening now?
Just, I would say carelessness. Somebody's just throwing it, and of course there's no...
I don't think it's carelessness.
Okay. Go ahead.
So in 2012 or 13, I was invited to speak at Ink Talks in Pune. And I went early. I went to Mumbai early, and I spent a week in Mumbai. And I went to Darvi. I went to the botanical gardens and talked with the director there. I went to a bunch of farmers markets, just markets, outdoor markets. I wanted to see all of the traditional, beautiful things that people have been using for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, if not way longer than that, thousands of years. I really loved seeing the clay cups, the unfired clay chai cups, or then the glass reusable ones that the chaiwala was carrying around. And then as soon as somebody drank their chai, they would take it and clean it out. Or the clay one, you would just drop it on the ground and it would go back into the beautiful red dirt that's beneath your feet. I loved that. And I, of course, did notice a more contemporary version of it, which is chaiwalas pouring boiling hot chai into plastic bags and people taking them to go and running away, drinking them out of the corner. So I don't even want to imagine how toxic that is. And that made me sad. But also in people's homes, the clay pots that folks use for water, and how the water, a lot of friends of mine who are from India, who are based in India, talked about with a kind of really beautiful nostalgia of what the water tastes like when they're home, and that has an earthy flavor to it from drinking that. And I thought that was a very beautiful, just a beautiful solution. And then at the open markets, I saw a lot of people taking banana leaves and tying things up in banana leaves for folks, or wrapping some twine around it when you purchase something, making a little packet for you. And then at certain restaurants, obviously I loved all the thali, or steel plates or steel trays that were used for food, and or putting again a piece of banana leaf or a leaf, or the leaf plates. My preference would be the leaf plates that didn't have the plastic ironed onto the back of them. Um, but, and then of course, India has this tremendous tradition of tiffins and lunch boxes. And then of course, all the Ayurvedic stuff with copper and copper containers. So to me, India, and actually from what I understood when I was there, and that was, more than 10 years ago, India had passed more laws banning plastics, plastic bags, and plastics than any other country. But it's so big that you don't really realize it. And then, of course, with the problem with passing any policy or legislation, laws, is the implementation and kind of the policing of that. But I thought India had everything that the country needed to be plastic free already, and already a long, long tradition of, buying real food, unpackaged, putting it in your basket or your bag, bringing it home, preparing it, etc. So to me, India, just as a country, it could, in a sense, be quite easy to change course when it comes to this. I do think that the use of single-use plastics and replacing a lot of things with single plastic cups, bottles, water bottles, bags, etc., is a very unfortunate gift from the Western world. Oftentimes, I found in different countries I've gone to, people get excited about this idea of throwaway culture, as if that is, you're so rich, you can throw things away. And I'm seeing it a lot of television shows and movies now, especially coming from Asia, that it's almost like a status symbol to see people with a plastic coffee cup with a lid. It's like a status symbol. And that, I think, is really unfortunate. How do I think we change things like that? I think we put energy and marketing into the things that are actually really cool, like my reusable cup.
There's obviously much more nuance to that idea in India as well. But I actually want to go back to something that you were saying before, and that's on the microparticles issue. And you talked about health, and you had also put a placeholder early on your mother's health. And talk to us a little more about that. And we were mentioning before we started recording our common friend, Sean Sutherland, who also, I was recently talking to her a couple of months back, and she said what we really need to focus on is actually health, because that might drive people to understand what is really happening, because that's up close and personal. So, and she's of course doing a lot of work with ocean health and human health as well. But it'll be great for us to understand your personal journey on the health side in terms of your close family, and also how it is truly going to impact if we don't do something about this.
Yeah.
Or is already impacting, actually.
Okay, that's a lot of question. That's a big question. But I would say that since we first started this work and creating Plastic Pollution Coalition 16 years ago, that health has always been the key. Health is the key because the chemicals that are used to make plastic, whether it's a petroleum-based plastic or a plant-based or bioplastic, oftentimes these chemicals are groups of chemicals called bisphenols or phthalates. And bisphenols are added as a plasticizer to make the plastic transparent, translucent, and rigid and form it. And the phthalates are added to make the plastic soft and malleable, like rubbery. So they're used in a lot of children's toys and rubber duckies, in squeezy toys and things for pets, for dogs, for cats, etc. These two groups of chemicals have been linked to such a huge, enormous amount of health issues because they function like endocrine disruptors in our body. So that brings me back to our mom having breast cancer that was estrogen receptive. What endocrine disruptors do is they function like synthetic hormones in our body, like synthetic estrogen. So, for example, a person who eats a lot of food and beverages packaged in plastic may suffer from obesity. Their body may hold more fat because the chemicals in the plastic are fooling their body into holding on to more fat. It's like giving your body a signal. So, for example, bisphenol A has probably been studied the most, but when they say something's BPA free, bisphenol A free, oftentimes they're using another bisphenol like BPB or BPS or BPZ. And what I've been told by Dr. Califat at the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta is that, one, when things say they're BPA free, they just switch to a different bisphenol, and it was difficult for them to find the marker to see what they'd switched to. But she said on everything that they looked at and studied, the BPA substitutes were equally bad, if not worse, to BPA in terms of being estrogenic, endocrine disruptors. Babies exposed to these chemicals, specifically BPA again, which has been studied the most, has been linked to shortened anogenital distance, smaller penis size, feminization of boys, so boys getting breasts, breast buds and breasts, early menses in girls, girls getting their period younger and younger and younger, attention deficit disorder, and lower IQ. So to me, even one or two of those things should be utterly alarming for everyone, right? But then these chemicals are also linked to fertility issues for people. And so to lower sexual function, sterility, infertility. And then they've been directly linked to breast cancer, brain cancer, and prostate cancer. And then again, like I said before, to obesity and diabetes. So making our bodies hold more fat. When plastics are in our bodies, like microplastics, they've now been linked to higher risk of cancers. As I mentioned before, heart attacks, strokes, and death, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. Again, like I said, infertility issues, reproductive problems, including people not being able to get pregnant. And these can also include miscarriage and stillbirth. Plastic particles in the penis have been linked to erectile dysfunction. I mean, it's a longer list than this, but I mean, hello, people. Wake up. Wake up. This stuff isn't great. It's not great for you. It's not good to eat and drink out of and package our food in and store our food in. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's an urgent danger to our health from this, and that your average person still has no idea.
And do you want to add PFAS to that list, or that's a different set?
Yeah. No, I would add PFAS to that list. PFAS, PFOA chemicals. There's a wonderful talk that Dr. Arlene Blum gave at our first TEDx that we produced, TEDx Great Pacific Garbage Patch. We produced it back in 2010. And she gave a talk about PFAS chemicals and flame retardants that were added to and are still added to many household products, including rugs and carpets, sofas, furniture, curtains. And she discovered it because she had a cat that was suddenly suffering from hypothyroid disease. And she reached out to another scientist. She's one of our scientific advisors. She founded the Green Science Policy Center. And she reached out to another scientist who was a friend of hers and said, hey, I have this situation with one of my cats, and I'm wondering if it could have anything to do with something in my home. And he said, why don't you take some samples of the dust, like off of your, you know, curtain, your sofa, the floor, the rug, and send them to me. And she sent them to him, and they were off the charts with PFAS chemicals. And she said she took a photograph of the dump truck that came to pick up her sofa, her curtains, and her rug. And she got rid of all of them.
We would like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Good Garbage is sponsored by Paca, a family of brands that produces compostable packaging and works to implement regenerative solutions. Paca's new project is to bring compostable food serviceware and food carry products to the North American marketplace. Learn more at paca.com. Now back to the conversation. You also created the on 2020 the story of plastic. So what were these learnings further enhanced through that process? What was that journey like in order to
Yeah,
create?
I mean that's a film that really helps you understand the landscape of how plastic is made and how it's directly impacting frontline and fence line communities across the United States and around the world. So they went to multiple continents and filmed in different parts of the United States. We were just, Plastic Pollution Coalition was just an associate producer on the film. So we just helped contribute to the production of the film. And then once the film was completed, we were involved in helping them get distribution on Discovery Channel so that it could be seen on television. But I think that was a very effective film. It was made by The Story of Stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. My wife was part of the original creation of Story of Stuff, and I think So the person who
Annie
created.
Leonard. Yeah.
Yeah, Danny Leonard. So my wife ran a very early sustainability-oriented agency called the Free Range Studios, and they were the ones who actually created the story of stuff. And as you were
Oh,
talking
right.
about the story,
Free Range Studios. We talked to them a few times.
yeah. So that was my wife was one of the co-owners of that.
Very cool. Very cool.
So yeah, it was interesting. And when you were talking about the story of plastic, I seemed to make that connection in my mind as well. That seems like the story of stuff. And Annie and I then talked a couple of times after that. It was very interesting. The other one that came to my mind, and I'm sure you know the book, but it is so poignant. Sicker, fatter, poorer. I think that's what the book is called, and it talks all about the diseases that we are causing through these chemicals in our system. Yeah, but again, I come back to changing of behaviors. One is the part of I agree with you that it's not convenient overall, but I still see our own team. We work every day on a singular idea: how do we leave the earth cleaner? But even yesterday, I was in the office and a couple of people picked up a plastic bottle. And I was like, wow, we all have these bottles, and they literally pack our bottles, and we have them everywhere, freely available. But I think as humankind, we are so used to that idea that, oh, you can just pick it up and then dispose it, as you were seeing. So what is your prescription for habit alteration in order to be able to really change our behaviors?
I mean, I really think that it's twofold. If we want to have behavior change, we need to put energy and resources and talking points and language and money into the right message to people, helping educate people with the correct science-based information. So that's one. Two is the cool factor. I think there's a huge cool factor, and I see it now when I visit my goddaughter who's at university at St. Andrews in Scotland. I see it on college campuses, and with my niece who's in middle school in Washington, D.C., kids carry their own reusable steel bottles with them often. And the way that to make that possible is to make water available for free again to students on school campuses, and not water that's coming from leaded pipes or something that tastes like mold. I mean, I remember giving a talk at one of our interns when she was in high school in the Valley here. And I talked with a whole bunch of kids from her Green Council at her school. And I asked them about the drinking fountains on campus, and they said, oh my God, that one, they had names for them. That's the one that tastes like blood. So it probably tasted like iron or something like that coming from the pipes. They had different names for all the drinking fountains and what they tasted like. So they raised money to put in the first hydration station at the school that was a filtered water system for where people could refill their bottles or drink from it like a drinking fountain. But I don't know why the students had to raise money to make water available to themselves. Like, that just seems so crazy to me. But I do think there's a cool factor to having your own cool bottle and your own cool cup.
Yeah, and I personally feel the packaged bottled water is the biggest marketing scam ever.
It's not only the
This.
biggest scam. It's not only the biggest scam ever. People aren't thinking, because where did that travel from? How long has the water been sitting in that plastic? Was it inside on the back of a truck? Was it in a storage container? Even if you buy it in a refrigerated section, it probably might have been sitting on pallets in the back of the store out in the sun for 3 days. I mean, who knows? And the more that it's exposed to heat or sun, the more microplastics are leaching into the beverage, and it tastes like plastic. When I'm at someone's home and they serve me plastic bottled water, if I take it and put it near me and it tastes like that, I don't drink it. I mean, I can't drink it anymore. I have a really hard time. I don't know how I ate and drank all these things. It was normalized. When I was a kid, we used to eat the cup of soup noodles where you pour boiling hot water into a styrofoam container. That's insane. And when I think about it, I can remember the flavor of it. It's disgusting. And it became normal. Like, we accepted it as if that was okay, which is just absolutely crazy. And then I think an important component of all of this is incentivizing the behavior change that you want to see. So what is the reward that someone gets? If someone regularly frequents a particular coffee shop, maybe where your office is based, if you normally get coffee from somewhere nearby, all of you, maybe you encourage that coffee shop to give people a small discount every time you come in with your own cup, or a substantial discount. And if they give a substantial discount, you become part of a program and you join like a loyalty program and you do that. We had very good results from a pilot project we launched at Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival, which was outside of Nashville near Manchester, Tennessee. And we did it for 7 years. But within the first 3 years of the program, it was a reusable single-walled steel cup with a strap and a carabiner. So you could buy it. When you didn't have a drink in it, you would attach it to your jeans or your purse or, something. And then you had it with you. And then every time from the first beer that you paid extra for this cup, every time you bought another beer, you got $1 off. And this was a 4-day music festival, 4 days and 4 nights. So everybody's camping, right? And they're using this reusable cup. And we only sold a small amount of them the first year. I think it was 80,000 people there, and they sold 1,500. It's not a lot. But they sold them out in a couple hours, and then people started stealing them from each other because they knew that there was an incentive to using them. Then what Bonnaroo did, which was super cool, is the next year we messaged it a little better each year. But the second year, they allowed people to bring the first year cup back and buy the new cup color for the new year. But they honored the cups from the year before. So they did that, and we estimated conservatively, or they did, on their sustainability report, that in the first 3 years, we saved 1.4 million plastic bottles and cups.
Wow. That's a crazy number. That's amazing.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And you're right, economic value definitely helps. The other one I'm always amazed by, and that takes me back to the discussion we were having on regulations. Typically, we ban plastic bags. And I go to a store, and I go to a lot of natural food stores as well. But even there, what I notice is they'll give you a paper bag in the end. Okay, great. But when I look inside that paper bag, there is still literally everything is in multi-layered flexible packaging. So you've done a very, very superficial job of, banning a plastic bag. But how does one change everything else? It is the snacks and the cookies and the even the rice and the anything you think of,
Mhm.
because of, again, I call it consumer convenience, at least because in an earlier time, at least when I was growing up, you would go to the local shop and he would have a big sack, and typically it was a jute sack, and you would get your own bag, and he would pour rice. Okay, how many kgs? And he will measure it and give it. Now it's all well packaged in a kg kind of bag. So so when I look inside the carry bag, there is still everything else is in multi-layered polymers. So how does one change something like that, which is so
Well,
ubiquitous?
that I think, again, I'm going to take you back to encouraging people to go to open farmers markets and open markets where you can bring your own bags and smaller bags and containers and just fill those up. Or with a health food market, oftentimes a lot of them have a bulk section where if you bring your own glass jars or containers, you can fill those up. I really encourage people to do that just for their own health and well being. If you have to buy something in plastic just for your own health, I would recommend when you get home, you move it into glass, or ceramic or steel. Yeah, I don't have a simple answer for you. Maybe you guys will figure it out with the packaging that you're creating. Maybe you'll figure it out because it's really the wild, wild west right now. It's for whoever's going to figure out the non-toxic, price competitive solutions, or if it's a tiny bit more, so it's a tiny bit more. But I mean, in my perfect world, those things are not more single use throwaway things. In my ideal world, they're reusable and refillable.
Yeah, I think the best packaging is no packaging. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more with you.
Well, it's funny. There's a great hashtag from Australia I learned about. We use it sometimes. It's called nude food. And there's another one too. Yeah, it's like an unpackaged one, but I can't remember. They're both a little bit racy sounding. Nude food. Ooh, Oh, it's shop naked. Shop naked,
Nice.
meaning no packaging. But I kind of like them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
sexy and cute.
And yeah, Australians are definitely, like, at least I find, way more conscious. I remember traveling in Australia, and my bus driver asked me what I was doing when I told him, and just wanted to talk to me. Literally, it's okay, great, like, we need this and we need that. And there was a long conversation that happened. The other one, which we mentioned in passing, is the efficacy of implementation of regulations. So of course, like you mentioned, India, yes, we have amazing laws
Mhm.
there, but the reality is that it is as bad or worse than was even 5 years back. What I find is a duality there. So as soon
Mhm.
as you have a regulation coming, the speed of innovation increases. I find that people want to find solutions, they want to remain in business, so they speed up. But there is also that string of repercussions. So the governments get faced with the idea of loss of jobs, lack of availability of alternates, lack of availability of scale, and then they tend to back down in the implementation side. So
Mhm.
what would your suggestion be to governments? Because I also see the flip side, where the speed of innovation is way better if there is a regulation. So how would you tackle that?
Well, I mean, I think right now you'll see, for example, in Europe or the European Union, that it's much more feasible to ban single-use plastics across the board and not just go for a single plastic bag ban, which, we also see with stuff here in California has loopholes in it that weren't taken care of, which is unfortunate. But Plastic Pollution Coalition includes a lot of other groups, including Oceana, and they did a key like poll findings where they took a poll and they found that 81% of US voters support reducing the amount of plastic that is produced, which I think is really interesting. 85% of US voters support increasing the use of reusable packaging and foodware. And 78% support national policies that reduce single use plastic foam. And 82% of US voters support protecting people in neighborhoods that are, you know, affected by pollution from nearby plastic pollution facilities. So I think that the desire to change things exists and that it's high. And that, when you say to me, even with your colleagues at work, they're coming in with plastic bottles. They don't understand yet the impact to their health, and they don't understand the impact to the environment, our air, our water, soil, and communities that are often communities of color, Black communities, brown communities, indigenous communities, and rural, frontline, fence line communities who are disproportionately impacted by this stuff. In that also when they go to the market, they don't have a choice. A lot of times if you're in like a lower income neighborhood, you can't say, oh, do you have that in glass? Like, it's not an option, right? But in all fairness, at the same time, sometimes in more rural neighborhoods, you're going to find more farmers, you're going to find more farms, you're going to find more produce that might be unpackaged, which could be great.
And there's a lack of understanding. Like you say, my wife originates from West Virginia, and I was just there last week actually. And it's amazing that there is a lack of understanding. And there's also a lack of understanding in like paper cups coated with polyethylene, and people, they're just paper cups and they're still using those red solo cups and the foam boxes, and it's also a lack of understanding. But I wanted to flip the effort that towards the effort that you're doing. And
Yeah.
when you look at your current projects, they're really interesting. Filtered, not bottled, flip the
Yeah.
script, plastics, global plastic laws,
Yeah.
understanding packaging scorecard.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. I had to look it up. How you're supporting her, and I love the name also, the last plastic straw. So, talk to us a little bit about the projects that you have undertaken as the coalition, and how are you planning to continue to move them in order to make this change that you're trying to make?
Sounds good. Well, since I had already described to you what we did at Bonnaroo Music Festival, that comes from a project that's called Refill Revolution. And in that project, we worked not only with Bonnaroo for 7 years, we also worked with Outside Lands. It's a big music festival in the Bay Area in Golden Gate Park. And we worked with, and I was invited to go actually on site and speak about it and be a part of the program in Thailand at a music festival that's called Wonder Fruit, that has a whole big sustainability component to it. Wonder Fruit, they did a really nice job. They made a steel cup, and then they made this beautiful cotton kind of sleeve that the cup fit into with these really nice carabiner and everything. It was just beautiful, and made those available to everybody. They actually incorporated it into the price of the ticket so that everyone got one who came on site. So that was really, really cool. That project has evolved. We're not as focused on it anymore, but we're part of a larger group that founded a separate website. The oversight for it is by Kim and Jack Johnson, the singer. Jack Johnson and their Kokua Foundation, and it's called byobottle.org. So bring your own bottle.org. And so there we gathered a lot of the successes and the information from our work and the work of other groups as well that were engaging with events, music festivals, music venues, behind the scenes, behind the set, and then what people are using in the general population. So that's been a really fun project. And that's overseen by Kim and Jack Johnson, now byobottle.org. Then there's another project that's the Understanding Packaging Scorecard. And that project came out of some presentations I gave at the Google Food Lab. And it turned into an accelerator. And it was a very interesting project to develop because we developed it with folks from Aramark, Compass at Google, Sodexo, Subway. There were other companies, some of them dropped out along the process, and us, Plastic Pollution Coalition, and the Lexicon of Sustainability. And together we all created what has become the UP Scorecard, which is upscorecard.org, or Understanding Packaging Scorecard. And if you go into the scorecard, it's currently a free tool unless you want to use it in a more expansive way. Then you can partner with UP Scorecard. And it's overseen by the Food Packaging Forum. They're part of our coalition. They're based in Switzerland. It's a really wonderful tool. It's a tool that allows companies and businesses to compare different kinds of packaging material and to-go material for foods and beverages. So I'm really, really proud of that tool and very happy and honored that we got to work on it with scientific advisors, so scientists who were experts on food packaging and chemicals in food packaging, but also with all these different big companies and food purveyors who this is of interest to them to help change this. So that was a wonderful project to develop. We also have an older project, which was plastic-free schools, plastic-free campuses. And that now exists as a separate website. It's called plasticfreecampus.org. And it's overseen by folks from Break Free from Plastic movement, which we helped create. And we gathered a lot of the resources and tools that we helped create to guide people, a guide that we produced with Post Landfill Action Network, which was a group of students. We produced a guide of how to create a plastic-free campus for universities. So that's free guides that people can download and utilize. And then currently on our site, the main projects that we're working on include the Global Plastic Laws Database. That also exists as a freestanding site, and that is a website people can go to. It's globalplasticlaws.org. You can go to it and you can look up the most current laws. And some of them will be in the original language from the country that they're from. But we have a bunch of partners on that, including Surfrider and other groups, another group from Europe, who work on continually updating the content and the laws and the information in that tool. Then we have Filtered Not Bottled, the Filtered Not Bottled initiative. That's super cool. And that is based on the idea of providing resources and information to cities. It began under the former administration, the Biden administration. There was money allotted to begin the long multi-year process of replacing toxic lead pipes across the United States, especially for schools and public facilities. And so we, through Filtered Not Bottled, make recommendations that cities replace with copper or recycled copper pipes versus plastic PVC pipes, which can be problematic because they're made with vinyl chloride and that's toxic for human health. So we recommend copper and recycled copper pipes. And we also recommend that cities help provide filters to people during the changeover of the pipes so that people don't all have to go buy plastic bottled water during the changeover. So there's that program. And then there's also a program I'm super excited about, which is, it's called Flip the Script on Plastics. And that project is a project about engaging the entertainment industry in changing the narrative. So not only changing what's happening on a set or production, film, television, etc., behind the scenes, but also changing what you see on screen. So we commissioned a report from the Norman Lear Center, the Norman Lear Media Center at University of Southern California, USC, in the Annenberg School of Communications, where they looked at the top television shows, including on cable and Univision and Telemundo, so in Spanish. And we looked at the prevalence of single-use plastic versus reusables on shows and documenting what we were seeing. And that initial report, which is now about 5 years old, shows that every episode, they looked at 2 episodes of each show, that every episode had at least 28 pieces of single-use plastic per episode and at least 1 mass plastic event, which means someone walked into a market or a supermarket or a hospital or a party sequence where there was so much single-use plastic that they couldn't count it all. So we are in preparation stages to do a new study now and use that first one from 5 years ago as a baseline. So that's one of the projects that we're working on. And additionally, right at the current moment, and I'm not sure when you're going to share this podcast, but we have a film competition where people can submit a short film that they make that's about plastic. Plastic has to be a component in the main storyline. And it's in the genre of horror, comedy, suspense, or thriller. And it can be 5 minutes or shorter. And the name of the film contest is called Plastic Kills Again. Because the first time we did this film contest, it was called Plastic Kills. So this is the second time we're doing it, and it's called Plastic Kills Again. And it's pretty exciting. We got wonderful films. The first time we ran this contest, we got over 70 submissions that were really good. And the first place film is hysterical. It's called Blastic. And it's about Dracula and Renfield trying to find plastic without, blood to drink for the vampire without microplastics in it. And it's quite like cheeky and funny and everything. And then the second place film in that one was called Throwaway Living. And it was kind of this throwback to the 50s of a housewife. And then she gets this kind of creepy, mysterious call from the future telling her that all the throwaway plastic she used was actually a bad idea and it's created a disaster. So, yeah. We like using art in the programs that we do. When I say art, I mean overarching, the creative arts. So music, film, television, comic strips, cartoons, film. Did I say that already? Visual art, people writing songs, etc., to help communicate the issue.
So what's the deadline for Plastic Kills Again?
I think that the films have to be submitted by September 15th.
Okay, we still have time. So even if we don't, what I was thinking is that even if we don't release the episode, we can promote it at least. We can kind of try to get. I was thinking of my own daughter. My daughter is an NYU film student, and she might
tell her right away. I'll send you the link. I hope she submits something. That would be great.
Yeah, and I think she's very, very creative with her work. So that was on the personal side, but we would love to promote it. Yeah, send us a link. We'll put it out through our social media and use that forum as well. The other one which I was fascinated with was, I don't know how you say it, but it said SUMD. It is Single-Use Material Deaccelerator. So that was an interesting one as well.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little more about that too?
Yeah, so SUMD stands for Single-Use Material Decelerator. And that is what we call the people who oversee the Understanding Packaging Scorecard. So that's kind of our government that oversees it. And I am the interim president of that at the moment, but we all take turns in different roles there. And we called it Single-Use Material Decelerator because we're looking at decelerating how much single use we're using.
So you're doing so many things. How do you fund these?
We're mainly funded by donations from the public and private individuals and some foundations and family foundations, but we can always use more funding. So if anybody's listening to this and you care about this stuff, feel free to contact us.
Yeah, that was my intent to give a shout out.
Thank you.
The other thing before we take it towards closure is one more thing I wanted to pick your mind on. The other argument we hear a lot is the ecological impact of other materials. So, of course, I hope that you know my dear friends Nicole and Valerie, who are at Canopy Planet. They've been working on the idea of deforestation and biodiversity because, again, lots of paper being created from old growth forests, that sort of an idea. And the other one which I notice is that we can create a lot of positive image in the public for certain biopolymers, even substrates that we create ourselves. But the public doesn't see the process. And there is so much impact that happens in terms of the energy use, the contaminants released, the chemicals used. How do you see that when you look at alternate materials? Do you see that as a huge challenge, or let us solve the plastic challenge first and then get to what is next?
I think we need to work on everything simultaneously. I don't think that there's an order here. And I do, just so you know, I really do think that cleanups, beach cleanups and ocean cleanups and river cleanups are not enough. They're absolutely not enough because they don't stem the tide of anything. And they also allow these big companies, for example, Coca-Cola, which, works with the ocean cleanup. It allows these companies to just continue expanding their production of this packaging and stuff, and then feel like they're doing something good because they're sponsoring some kind of cleanup. once we're dealing with something in a cleanup capacity, it's already poisoned people like 50 times along the way. So I don't think we should focus on the downstream solutions. I think we need to focus on a lot of upstream solutions simultaneously. And those include alternate materials and alternate containers and alternate infrastructure situations and reuse and refill and everything.
And you said that, we have to work on everything simultaneously. So it's not one or the other. And I tend to agree with you. I don't think it's even practically possible to really clean up everything. And then clean up and then what? Where does it go again?
Well,
It's
and
not
that's the thing.
really,
A lot of people involved in cleanup, a lot of people who are involved in cleanup, they're not paying attention to where it goes afterwards. When I've asked about it, they say, oh, it just goes into whatever the municipal system is that they have there. And that's many places. When you asked me at the beginning of the conversation about people being careless, I don't think people are being careless. I think what you're finding is, for example, when you're talking about, in the foothills of the Himalayas, you're talking about people who for many years either used reusables or they used something that came from nature that you could drop on the ground and it would decompose. So when you replace that with a man-made material like a plastic, that doesn't decompose, then you have a problem. And I've been told by friends, I have a good friend who's a Sherpa for, all these different mountains in the Himalayas. And, the amount of plastic that's left up on top of Mount Everest or at base camp, et cetera, it's a total disaster. And it's the opposite of that kind of pack it in, pack it out model, which is that we should be leaving the natural world all around us. And I'm sorry, that includes down the block from my house, as clean as possible and not dumping things everywhere. But we're living in a system that kind of rewards this really irresponsible way of grabbing things and eating things and doing things. And it's not good for people's health. It wasn't good for the people who lived near where it was being produced or the people who worked in the factory where it was being produced. And it's going to be a waste management problem right away because plastic's not designed to be recycled. It's just not. And the numbers on the plastic only identify the polymer type and 6 is other. So it's not designed to be reused or recycled. If anything, all of those numbers and the arrows are greenwashing on stuff. So an important thing that we need to do is change how we communicate about this stuff and get rid of the greenwashing and the lying that's happening. But I think it's really important to look at the different upstream spots where we can have an impact or an effect and, uplift and support those. I know that you're asking me about the materials that other things are made out of because steel is a very labor intensive, material. It uses a lot of materials. It uses fire and heat and all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to be able to use this cup for my whole life if I don't lose it. And if I lose it, I hope that the person who finds it uses it in good health, right? Because it's a physical thing that exists. And it also could be recycled if it needed to be melted down.
It'll become steel again. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. You're right on plastics. There's no such thing. The whole idea of recycling petroleum polymer is a misnomer. And you talked about 16,000 chemicals, and there is no such thing as plastic, right? It's a loose term. It could be a styrene, an ethylene, a propylene, all kinds of materials which are not going to be created in the same shape again. So I couldn't agree with you, but we'll have a different conversation on this, but I do find that argument convenient too, that, we are just used to throwing it because it was degradable. I think we've lived enough years now that, we need to get over that idea that it's going to, just because it was degradable and hence we throw it. But yeah, for another time. And just on the note we were talking about earlier, and it's so depressing, even just a couple of weeks back, I was in Zanzibar and my daughters and I were diving, and the whole coral there, which used to be pristine, was completely bleached. And you could, and those are, of course, the effects of global warming. And then again, similar to what you were saying, a couple of years back, we were diving off the coast of Kerala, and again, so much. You could see plastic floating there, and then different on the bottom of this ocean and all of.
You're breaking my heart telling me that.
My heart was broken just 2 weeks back. I was like, oh my
What
God.
was all of Zanzibar's coral bleached, or just some
All
of
of the, at least what they call the Blue Lagoon, which used to be the big diving near the island on the east side, completely. Not just like, those beautiful corals. You could see the movements and everything. It's gone. It's and as I'm saying it, I feel like crying. But that is the feeling I had there.
How old are your daughters?
So the ones diving were 22 and 9. And then they both love diving, and the 9-year-old.
Sign me up, Ved, for your next family trip.
Absolutely, and they both love they both love being out in nature, and then I have a 16-year-old as well who has her own sport, but she doesn't want to dive. But the dream of the oldest is that the middle one will start as well, and that's going to be their sister holidays. So let's hope so.
Well, that's so amazing, and I have to say that, okay, so on average, your average person also has never looked under the water in the ocean, and we live on a planet that's covered with water, right? But the majority of the planet is actually underwater, and it's so magical and magnificent and tremendous, and we barely understand it.
Yeah, but also heartbreaking when we go down.
Yeah, and we barely understand it, and we're busy throwing all our garbage in it. So
yeah. Okay, so all good things have to come to an end. So I'll move towards my final 2 questions.
Okay.
So tell me about the materials and ideas that you're excited about in the next, in the work that you're doing. These are the maybe 3 to 5 ideas or materials that you think are going to be greatly impactful in the future, in a positive way, of course.
So there are only a few materials that I'm really excited about. I'm really excited about seaweed and algae and kelp, and I'm really excited about mushrooms and mycelium. Those are the main materials that I'm really excited about. But I'm open to learning more about all the things people are doing with all of the waste product from sugar, sugarcane, pineapple, hemp, everything else. I just don't want to see toxic chemicals added to those to make them functional. So
I'm going to actually add a question. I said last 2, but I'm going to make it 3 because of what you mentioned. And I loved seeing on your site my friends from Ecovative and Sway, and them being part of your coalition. So the question is, those listening, because lots of the people who are listening are going to be people from the industry which is creating alternative materials. How do they join your coalition?
It's really easy to join our coalition. You can join our coalition by just clicking Join Coalition, and you can join us as an individual. Or if you're a business, you can apply to join us as a business. Or if you're an organization, you can apply to join us as an organization. And we go through and we vet the companies and the organizations that reach out to join us. And then we make a decision and let you know.
Super. Thank you for that. My last question. What does good garbage mean to you?
I would say good garbage is, I would liken it to what I said earlier, which is that I would like to live on a planet with 100% valuable materials, where we, human beings, just like everything else that's had more time to evolve than us in nature, utilizes every part of everything and designs things to be used and reused with thoughtfulness, with a conscience, and that companies are all responsible for the end of life, not only of their product, but of the packaging that they use. That would be some good garbage.
Wonderful, Dianna. This has been such a great conversation, and there has been so much learning for me. And more than that, what I find is that we just need people like you up front who are actually being as transparent and as clear in what they're saying and calling it what it is. And I think that's a great ray of hope for us as humans on this planet. So thank you for being a steward and for doing what you're doing. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you too, Ben.